Allow me to paint a picture. Now allow me to tell you a story. The Myst games were critical and commercial successes, one much more than the other, but I mean hey, sequels almost never do as well. Still, the data was clear. People like Myst. Dramatic expansion of the Myst universe was now not only possible, but in demand. Internally, Cyan was working on real Myst, and they were playing around with the idea of an MMO, one that would eventually take the form of Uru. This was going to be their big new thing, a massive departure but philosophical extension of the core Myst series, one in which the world would change in real time regardless of the player's involvement. But, as they would eventually find out, no one actually wanted that. They wanted another sequel, another Myst game, one that Cyan at the moment didn't have the resources to make. So they and the owners of the Myst series at the time, Mattel Interactive, invited third-party studios to bid on the possibility to work on Myst 3. The project eventually went to Presto Studios, who impressed Mattel and Cyan with their story, gameplay, and visual concepts, clearly having done their research on Myst and Riven, figuring out what worked and what didn't. Now, being a Halo fan myself, franchises changing hands worries me by instinct. There's always a possibility that because the brains that hold the original ideas for the series aren't nearly as involved, the new stewards of a beloved franchise could lose their way or fall to market trends. But Presto understood their assignment. Their job was to maintain the standards of the Myst series, believable characters, brilliant worlds, mind-bending puzzles, but they also wanted to push the limits of the Myst series. They wanted to make a fun Myst game, a game with palpable forward momentum, a game whose puzzles drive your progress, not thwart it. The game they made is Myst 3 Exile, and it is, in fact, the most fun mainline Myst game. So friggin' loud. The best place to start talking about how Exile evolved the Myst series is this. This is awesome. When I first booted up Exile on my dad's 500-pound compact laptop and swung the mouse around, my brain fell off. These 360-degree bubble nodes that give you full control of the camera really do feel like the natural next step in the Myst series' presentation. These games are intended to be as immersive as possible, and I mean, you can look around in real life. It's a no-brainer. Let them look around. The super nice thing about this change is that it doesn't affect the core gameplay at all. Upgrading the visuals of a game could come with its own problems, like longer load times, dropped frames, graphical bugs, optimization issues, etc., but the transitions between nodes are just as lightning fast as in Myst and Riven because everything is still pre-rendered. The point-and-click experience in Myst 3 is essentially the same as it ever has been. But what if you're doing something that requires frequent, rapid mouse movements and you don't want to barf? Well, would you believe it? They came up with a use for the other mouse button. Right-clicking at any time locks the camera in place so you can freely move your cursor around. It's all so natural and intuitive. The transition from the slideshow format of Myst and Riven to these 360-degree bubbles is so seamless, it's worth playing Exile for this alone. I'm overselling it for sure, and today this kind of presentation might seem quaint, but I really do think they nailed it. There are so many of these nodes, and they had to make sure that they all worked perfectly, that animations played flawlessly, and that every variation for each node was accounted for. They go into this in the making of doc. Every node was pre-rendered, of course, but what that meant was they had to render a node for each and every position a moving object in that node could take. And they had to integrate the alleged 150,000 plus frames of animation this game has into all of them. It's an absolutely monumental amount of work, and it's tragic because the goal of that work was for it to never occur to the player that they had to do it, and they succeeded. Because of Presto Studios' efforts, the world of Exile is more real and alive than either Myst or Riven. But the 360-degree nodes aren't the only gameplay innovation here. In Postmortems from game developer edited by Grossman, Exile producer Greg Euler describes various goals he and the dev team wanted to reach for the final product. One of these was a system for clearly conveying to the player how much progress they were making through the game. He notes that a lot of people who never beat Myst or Riven gave up because they were unsure of how much remained of the game and what their goals were. And you know what? I could believe that. Riven especially had no method of communicating how close you were to the end of the game right up until you actually get there. So Exile says right at the start, okay, listen up. You have to get Relishon back, and in order to do that, you have to get 3 symbols. There are 3 big tusk houses around here. That's where you go to get them. Duh. So that's step 1 done. Step 2 is showing you that when you do get a symbol, the world permanently changes. So you use these symbols to visually alter the state of the cage that holds the Narayan linking book, states that the game has shown you already when you were trying to get into this observatory. It's foolproof. There's no way a player can't know how far they are through the game. Exile is the best game in the series so far at talking with the player. Like the Riven remake, the game wants you to beat it. More specifically, the developers want you to beat it. They want you to be satisfied with your experience playing their game, and part of that comes from communication with the player through visual and gameplay elements. It's just good game design. And that's a decent segue into the most important part of any Myst game, the cornerstone of the Myst series, the thing that makes these games what they are. Rand Miller's hatred of acting. Nah, I'm just kidding, it's the puzzles. Exile is aesthetically a sequel to Riven, with its dedication to photorealistic graphics and amazing sound design plainly apparent at every turn. But in its structure and gameplay, it's more directly a sequel to Myst, with a central hub age and several other isolated ages, each with their own self-contained puzzles. While I love Riven and appreciate how it's structured, I think this was a good choice. It allows for more variation in the visuals and puzzle design, giving the developers more creative freedom to come up with puzzles that fit these different worlds. Though there is a drawback to this structure. There are far more puzzles for puzzle's sake in Exile than there was in Riven. What does that mean? Well, you know how when you need to restart a power generator, you have these 3 wheels of connectors and you spin them around to make sure they all connect at each of the 5 access points on this panel? No, of course not. No one would design a generator that way. This is a puzzle for the sake of being a puzzle. Both Myst and Riven had this problem too, Riven to a lesser extent, but that's where these games' stories come in to do some heavy lifting. In Exile's case, the puzzles exist as a sort of schooling for Atreus' sons, Cirrus and Achenar. Each age's puzzles are themed around that age's unique lesson, and they all end up feeding into the central idea of balance. They're also, by and large, pretty easy for Myst standards, but like I said in my Riven remake video, easier doesn't mean worse. These are good puzzles, each with solid theming to their respective ages, each with tangible results that make it obvious what you need to do next. So let's take a look at each age and see how their puzzles work within them. Voltaic is an age all about energy and the different forms it can take. Heat, steam, electricity, rushing water, you'll be playing around with all of these in Voltaic. Every single puzzle in this age is solved by manipulating power generators and power delivery systems to bring the age to life. This kind of framing is perfect for a puzzle game like this. Solving a puzzle to unlock a door is one thing, but solving a puzzle to route power is the closest you can get to translating real life to a video game. There's almost nothing you do in Voltaic that couldn't be done in the real world. You redirect a river to push a water wheel, which powers a generator, which itself distributes power to everything else. You turn on a fan to pump steam through an extensive network of pipes and valves so you can inflate this hot air balloon. By using so many recognizable elements in its puzzles, it makes it easier for the player to intuitively understand what needs to be done to solve them. Everyone knows what a water wheel is and what it does. Everyone knows that electricity can flow when connections are made between wires. Everyone knows why a hot air balloon is called that. The Myst series has always kept one foot firmly rooted in reality, but Voltaic celebrates reality, reminding us that the real world can be pretty neat, and how cool it is to just make things work. But this theming is kind of a double-edged sword. Voltaic's deference to reality can occasionally spill over into mundanity. There's not really much here to stimulate the player's imagination. I said in my Riven video that it's good for a game to have realistic grounding elements so that the player has something to relate to, but I think Voltaic overdoes it in that regard. However, the age still looks cool as hell. It's like a steampunk Black Mesa. The enormous dry dock doors that fold back like a sandworm's mouth, the walkway through the canyon that resembles the skeleton of a giant snake, and let's not forget about the spinny elevator. I love this thing, it's so fun. Yes, Voltaic doesn't have a lot of crazy stuff going on, but I still really enjoyed revisiting it for this video, in large part due to its intuitive, satisfying puzzles. Idana is the exact opposite of Voltaic. This age is overflowing with life, every kind of flora and fauna thriving, cooperating, and competing for survival on the husk of a great upturned tree that seems at once long dead and actively nurturing everything that resides within it. Referred to as the Life Age during development, Idana seems almost completely untouched by humanity, instead focusing on how nature finds its own balance, how all forms of life, when they develop together, find ways to cohabitate and even depend on each other. And this is reflected in the Age's puzzles. Every puzzle in Idana almost exclusively involves messing with the plants and animals, causing them to exhibit natural reactions that coincidentally provide paths forward for you. And while this is undeniably a fantastic and novel idea for an age and its puzzles, it's also the source of its issues for me. Every single puzzle in Idana has an unshakable air of contrivance about it. Ironically, despite Idana being filled to bursting with organic life, none of the puzzles feel organic. Like a flower that can focus light like a lens, why not just have a lens? Because this is the Life Age. Tangled vines shaped like a trapeze, why not just have a ladder? Because this is the Life Age. A goofy-ass plant elevator that flaps as it spins you around, this one's really weird. The natural theme of Idana constantly butts heads with the idea that this is a puzzle game. Plants and animals in this age can't just be life forms, they also have to be puzzle pieces, which means they need to be understood, which means they have to be simple. Take, for example, these shady ferns here. You press a button on their base and they fold up, letting the sunlight spill in. When have you ever pressed a button on a plant? This is functionally a patio umbrella, but it needs to be a plant because this is... you get it. Now, while the puzzles of Idana need to be simpler than its theming would suggest, it's actually the trickiest age in Exile to navigate, and that can also be attributed to its natural nature. Did I really write that? Like Myst, Riven, and Exile's other ages, Idana has its fair share of branching paths and hidden alcoves, but because everything is overgrown and all different forms of life pop up everywhere you look, it's hard to know what's a path, what's an interactive element, and what's just a pretty flower. But the issues with the puzzles and the navigation don't actually stop Idana from being a lot of fun to figure out. Yes, the puzzles are inorganic, yes, it's hard to get around, but, I mean, Look at this place. Look at what you do here. You swing on a vine across a chasm like Tarzan, you ride up and down a leaf elevator that hops from one branch to the next, you guide an electric fish through a root system to free a big bird from an even bigger pitcher plant. The events and interactions Presto was able to pull off for this age are a testament to the effort made to design a living ecosystem with readable puzzles. Idana rules, mold spores and all. The last of the 3 lesson ages, Amateria, was made specifically for me. Remember these things? That's Amateria. This age is one big marble track wrapped in East Asian-inspired architecture, hexagonal basalt pillars, glowing tide pools, and a perpetual sunset, giving it the most unique and bonkers aesthetic in the whole game. But it's also the least visually cohesive out of all of them. And that's not to say that it isn't visually cohesive, it definitely comes together really nicely. But compared especially to Voltaic and Idana, which both look like they could be stumbled upon in the real world, Amateria looks distinctly artificial. It looks like someone built this place specifically to teach whoever comes here about physics. And that impression of artifice is only reinforced by the puzzles. Every single puzzle in Amateria is a puzzle for puzzle's sake. Now, I don't want this to stay only implied. Some contrivances in this age, or any of the other ages for that matter, don't really bother me. The game already explained what these ages are for, so the fact that these puzzles are just brain teasers with no other purpose makes narrative sense. Regardless, the real fun of this age in particular doesn't even come from the puzzles. It comes from watching this big icy marble roll around. To me, the puzzles in Amateria are the most rewarding to solve because it's just great to see your efforts result in this marble making it along the track without exploding. I think it gets at a universal feeling, the feeling you get when something you make actually works, whether it's a marble run, or a computer program, or a batch of cookies. It's a fantastic feeling. That being said, Amateria's puzzles are wildly inconsistent in difficulty. This one is literally just working out what path the marble's gonna take. This one is trickier, but it mostly comes down to trial and error. And this seesaw puzzle is the hardest in the game. Not only is it the one puzzle in Exile that requires information from outside the age in which you find it, but it's also the only one that just doesn't explain a vital piece of it. Look, you can set the fulcrum of the seesaw to 3 different positions, and it's not clear what exactly that changes until after you've solved the puzzle. Exile establishes itself as a game whose puzzles teach you how to solve them, and that's just not the case with this one. But honestly, none of the problems with Amateria matter once you reach the end. The final sequence of this age is the single most gratifying payoff for all the frustration you may have endured in the entire series. If you've gotten here, you know what I'm talking about. Amateria has taken up permanent residence in my psyche, right alongside the first roller coaster I ever rode and the massive Connect set I helped build one year at summer camp. Finally, we arrive at Narayan, the age most central to the game's story. You end up face to face with Grima Wormtongue, yes, Grima Wormtongue, who threatens to kill you if you try to escape without setting him free as well. And he's more than happy to follow through on that. There's a ton of mistakes you can make here, which is pretty neat. It makes this section feel like a real struggle between you and Savidro, where he will take advantage of any opening you give him. This interaction was clearly meticulously planned, and it had to be as it's the final puzzle in Exile. And it is a fun one, bolstered by genuine stakes, and Brad Dourif clearly having a lot of his own fun. I mean, look at this. Look at how saucy he is, casually dooming an entire people to an eternity of isolation. I love how this game ends. It's not as brilliantly ambiguous as Riven's ending, but it is more conclusive. It's a fitting and hopeful ending to Atreus' story of responsibility for the destruction he unwittingly allowed to happen by letting his trust fund kids play at imperialism. Myst 3 Exile's legacy isn't all that positive. A little over a year after its release, Presto Studios announced that it would be closing down for good. It took 9 years for Exile to sell as many units as Riven sold in 1 year. But focusing on the legacy of Exile the product, I think does a disservice to the legacy of Exile the video game. It was, when I first played it, and still might be, the most fun I've had playing a Myst game, due to 3 crucial elements. 1, measurable progress. 2, spectacular payoffs. And 3, Brad Dourif as Savidra. None of these elements, especially the last one, were present to nearly the same degree in Myst or Riven. It's not fun to have no idea what you need to do next. It's not fun to have no idea if you were supposed to do what you just did. Presto knew that, and went out of their way to make a Myst game that was more fun than frustrating. That's not to say Myst and Riven aren't fun at all. I wouldn't be talking about Exile if they weren't. But, I mean, come on. The Fire Marble puzzle, the Selenitic maze, come on. Exile, to me, is pound for pound, puzzle for puzzle, the most fun mainline Myst game. And a great studio died for it. The least you could do is give it a shot. Tell him Logan sent you. Cut that.